Hey folks, welcome to the session. Let's just give it a minute for folks to jump on and rest their brains after that amazing trees note. I didn't actually get to see it because I was setting up for this, but I'm sure it was very informative. Anyway, let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to Decoupled Drupal for Data. Sorry, it's a bit of a tongue twister. I'm Mike McCaffrey, a senior architect at Calamuna. My role at Calamuna is to take the general requirements for our client projects, ask a whole bunch of questions, and figure out the best way to structure things in order to create a maintainable system and an accessible user experience. If you've been in the Drupal community for any length of time, you've probably heard the phrase decoupled Drupal, and you probably know that decoupling is definitely the future of Drupal, even if you don't know exactly how or why. Well, when people talk about decoupling, they can mean a lot of different things, some of which are more relevant than others when it comes to improving your own website. In this brief session, we're going to be talking about progressive decoupling, which is what you get when you take one buzzword and pair it with another. Specifically, we're going to talk about how you can create a JavaScript application that lives within your Drupal site, adding some additional features while still leaving the bulk of the functionality in the hands of Drupal. Over the course of the next 9 minutes or so, we're going to discuss one project where a decoupled architecture helped us build some new features for an existing site. There were some ambitious requirements that would have been hard to implement with Drupal alone. So we decided that a front-end JavaScript application would probably be the most elegant solution. Since we only have a limited amount of time here, we can't really discuss things like fully decoupled Drupal or all the different JavaScript frameworks that you might use. And unfortunately, we can't really get into all the nuts and bolts of how we implemented this project, though we luckily have a lengthy blog post on our site that goes into more depth. I'll display the link later. So the client for the project was the San Francisco Unified School District. They were looking to create an updated version of their school finder interface. Just for some background, San Francisco has a fairly complex process for enrolling students, like districts in other large cities. Parents need to submit a ranked list of schools they'd like their child to attend. It can be hard to figure out which schools to apply to because they all have different services and programs and starting times and such, and you might be limited in your choices of what schools your child can go to. Therefore, it's really important for the district to help guide the parents through the process and let them get all the information they need before they submit their application, and the School Finder is one way they do that. The district website already had a searchable directory, which included many features that help the parents research schools, and we were initially going to build upon that for the new School Finder features. The directory was implemented as like a regular Drupal view that showed a series of school nodes as teasers and were filterable using exposed filters. And the interface worked great for casual use, but it needed more features in order to be truly useful for the parents who are researching schools for their kids. The client had been adding more filters to the view, but over time, as the relationships and the data increased in complexity, the changes became harder to implement and slower for the queries to execute. In addition to those issues, it became apparent that we need a slightly different interface than Drupal provides, either in core or common contributed modules. There's simply too much data presented as a series of nodes or as a table of fields with each school as a row. So we took the client through our standard project workflow. We helped them clarify the requirements of their users and proposed a new design for the School Finder. When it came to the implementation, we decided to use Knockout.js as our front-end framework. Knockout's a lightweight open source framework. It doesn't require any dependencies, and it has strong cross-browser support. Also, its model view model architecture, or MVVM as everyone refers to it, was ideal for updating the data being displayed based on the interactions of the users. So before the enrollment period began for the fall 2021 semester, we helped launch the improved version of the School Finder with the new architecture and the updated interface. The application is now decoupled. Views is still used to assemble all the data about the schools, but instead of filtering and displaying all the results itself, Drupal now outputs the data as machine-readable JSON object. On page load, the Knockout application started, it ingests all of that JSON data and converts it into an internal data model. And then it uses that to render all of the results on the page. To the user, the schools are displayed as a series of cards that can be scrolled through like a carousel. However, despite the styling, the display is actually just a standard HTML table element, with each school name as a column header. Displaying all the data as an HTML table was great for accessibility because it lets people using screen readers and keyboard navigation to easily move through the data and find what they're looking for. The table rows also line up different categories of data about each school, and that lets the results be scanned and compared side by side. The users can select options from a variety of different filters along the top of the page. And then Knockout can quickly figure out which records match the provided criteria and display just those schools. Since that's done without making any page requests for additional data, the updates happen almost instantaneously. And since the JavaScript model has all the data about all the schools, it's easy to make additional calculations and update the attributes of schools based on user interactions. For example, when given the user's location, we can quickly compute the distance to each one of the schools and display that value in the school card. Once we have those distances, we can sort the matching results from the nearest school to the furthest, since we can assume that students would prefer to spend less time commuting to school. And just like with the filtering, the sorting happens almost instantaneously as the model and view are quickly updated by Knockout. The JavaScript can also make AJAX requests and fetch additional data from external sources. When address is entered, the system can query an external database that SFUSD maintains to get the attendance area for that location, which is basically the default elementary school for an area, as far as I can understand it. That means that decoupled architecture, Drupal doesn't really need to know about all the data that's being used to filter and sort the content that it delivers to the front end. The results after launch have been positive. Parents seem to have a much improved experience researching schools. The decoupled architecture is providing speedy filtering and sorting without endless page requests. And the architecture allows additional features to be easily added in the future without any problems. If you'd like to know about all the intricate details of how we implemented the project, we have an in-depth blog post on the Kalamuna blog, appropriately titled Progressively Decoupled Drupal. And if you're an organization that has a bunch of complex data like this and are looking to figure out a better way to deliver to your users, please contact Kalamuna. We'd love to help. And if you found this session interesting and would love to work on similar projects, Kalamuna is currently hiring for a front-end lead in addition to many other technical and non-technical roles. So please check out our website. And thanks for coming to the session or watching the video later. Please feel free to reach out with any questions you might have, and I'll do my best to point you in the right direction. Thanks. And if anyone has any questions in the chat or QA, let me know. Thank you for the thumbs up. There is a link to the blog post. I can go back to that slide. I mean, you can just go to kalamuna.com and we have a link to our blog, and it is one of the first few ones, if you don't want to type all that in. I guess I could also try to link it. I'm not going to touch this. Sharing screens is hard. But maybe Kristen can post a link to the blog post. There we are. She's so fast. Yes. All right. Well, I hope everyone has a lovely rest of their DrupalCon. I think there's a QA for Dries now, so feel free to go ask him about the future of decoupled Drupal. Did we use Elasticsearch? I do not believe we did. We really kept this project as simple as possible, where Knockout just processes the data and does everything on the front end without too much work. All right, guys. See you later.